Examples of star trails. I'm going to switch over to Lightroom to show you some examples of what star trails look like. This was taken in November of 2010 under an almost full moon. So, and it was only 5-minute exposure. If you run longer than 5 minutes, you'll start blowing out everything. So you can do things under a full moon, but this was f8 200 ISO for 5 minutes. So generally, you don't get a full star trail under a full moon, and very faint stars will not be visible. This is the full circular star trail taken at the Racetrack Valley in Death Valley. And I light painted the trail from the moving rocks out there. The North Star is right here. It's not really, it doesn't really rotate around the circumpolar point, but it's very close. So you can use it to set up your star trails. So that's an 2-hour star trail. I generally like 2-hour star trails. Chris doesn't like 2-hour star trails. He thinks there's too many trails. This was another 2-hour trail, and here is the North Star up here in the corner. This was taken at the Alabama Hills, and that's a good spot because it's very dark up there. The other thing you can really see on this picture is the stars actually have color. And if you process them right and don't blow them out, you can actually get the color of the stars. You get blue stars, yellow stars, you can get some red stars too. And this was taken at Death Valley for the 20 Mule Team display there at the Harmony Borax Works at night. Just barely caught the North Star in the top. And you might wonder what happens if you try to do a star trail in the southern hemisphere. Well, there is no North Star in the southern hemisphere. There's no South Star. And this was actually pointed north and just below the equator. So it appears like it's rotating around the horizon. So the rotation point is just barely above the horizon. This is another one taken at Alabama Hills. I think it's a good spot to do star trails. This one was taken at Trona, and you can see there's just a little bit of a satellite running through this one that they didn't take out. When you do star trails near the east-west side, you get straight lines rather than circles. So they bend what to the left in the northern side of it and to the right in the southern side. So you can get either way. You can get if you shoot toward the east or the west, you'll get these straight lines that curve up to either left or right or both. Another favorite subject is the bristlecone pines. So this was taken up at the bristlecone pines, which was another very dark site.
Also cold.
Also
Very cold.
can be cold if you do it in November, September.
This is stuff that the White Mountains.
White Mountain. Was it in the White Mountain?
It's in the White Mountains. And this was also taken at the Alabama Hills. And this was Red Rock Canyon. I took this one in December in Red Rock Canyon. And this is another one of Red Rock Canyon, the parking lot that's right next to the highway.
So the headlights of the cars running by doesn't mess you up?
Well, I'll go into that when I talk about processing. But, so essentially I was processing it to avoid problems with the headlights. But you can see in this one especially, there's a lot of color in the stars. And this is the North Star. So I've set it up right over the peak here. And then I'm going to go back and go to the PowerPoint presentation. Both star trails in the Northern Hemisphere use the North Star and are circular. So you can tell your longitude or latitude depends on where you are. So that will depend on how high the North Star is. So if you were shooting it at the North Pole, the North Star would be directly overhead. If you're shooting at the equator, then of course you won't see the North Star because it's right at the horizon. So you can tell about how high the North Star is by where you're located. You can shoot a star trail in any direction, but I happen to think that this circumpolar star trails are a little more attractive. And if you're in the Southern Hemisphere, there is no South Star, so it's a little more difficult there. Where to find the North Star? Once you found the North Star, Polaris is the North Star, and it's fairly bright, so you can even see it in a city like Lancaster. So once you learn how to find it, it's relatively easy to spot. The two stars on the bucket of the Big Dipper are thought of as the pointer stars, and they point right to the North Star. So once you get used to finding it, you can find it pretty easily. It's one of the brighter stars, so it'll come out fairly early as it's getting dark. You can use programs such as the photographer's ephemeris to see where the North Star will be and at what time you can start shooting. The app PhotoPills, if you use the augmented reality, you can see where the North Star is, because it'll be the same spot no matter what time of day you're using it. So you can point it out there and it'll superimpose whatever the camera sees the sky. So you can see the North Star and you get an idea of where it is. So it's a very good app to have.
That iPhone app or is it for Android too?
I think it's both. I think it's both. I don't think it's. I know it works for iPhone.
Okay. And I have an Android.
What price, what did we pay?
I think it's $10 for $9.99. It's a pretty cheap app. See, if you want to really see the stars and get a dense star trail, it's best with no moon. So you can, as I showed that one example, you can shoot it with a very bright moon, but you won't get very many stars. So it's best to have a spot that's very, very dark, especially when you're looking north. The light pollution is a problem with LA to the south of us. And also, Prism to the west, they have a lot of lights. So that's why I go up north. You need a clear sky too, so as you do for Milky Way, you need a very clear sky. Clouds will mess up the star trails more than they do the Milky Way shots. Some of the locations near us, Red Rock Canyon is very good. Although they claim it's only dust, dawn to dusk. But I've only been chased out of there once. The Trona Pinnacle's also dark. There's a lot of light towards Trona, but it's pretty dark. The Alabama Hills are a very good spot because it's very dark over there. There's not a lot of light in Lone Pine. The Bristlecone Forest is in the White Mountains, and it's also a good spot. I've been going to the Methuselah, the
Does those grow?
The farthest
The
one.
farther Grove. I think it's the Methuselah Grove rather than Shulman Grove, which is the closest one, because there's so many people there, they want you to stay on the trail. And there's hardly anybody at the upper one. This is another, 10 miles on a gravel road, so it takes a little effort to get there. Another good spot is Mono Lake. It's dark. And we did a field trip there back about 2011, 12, shot some star trails. The other one is Death Valley can have some very dark spots. So that's why I got the 20 mule tube wagon there. You can do the sand dunes. The racetrack valley is very dark. So it's important to look at the weather source to know if it's going to be clear or not. If it's going to be cloudy or partially cloudy, it's not worth the trouble. So you've got to have no moon plus a clear sky. And there's two sources that I recommend. One is called cleardarkskies.com. And it's got, you can pick locations. It's got a whole bunch, it has forecasts with the cloud cover for about 48 hours in advance. It's not 100% accurate, but no forecast is. The Weather Service has forecast.weather.gov, and it's got an hour by hour breakdown of the cloud cover. So you can look at that. It's also got wind speed. Chris, you got a question?
Yeah, is clear dark sky only for the continental US?
I think it goes into Canada too.
Okay, but US.
It's based in Canada, so I think it's North America. And the US weather forecast does 7 days in advance, although it's subject to change quite a bit. So basically, we look at the forecast either the day before and the day of, and if it looks like it's going to be bad, we'll cancel the photo shoot.
We being you and me.
Yeah. The gear I recommend, you need as much as for Milky Way shots, you need a fast lens. At least f4 and 2.8 is better. And it helps if you want to get all the stars to have a wide lens, at least 24 millimeters. You absolutely have to have a sturdy tripod and a remote release. Preferably, in some of these recommended settings, you need an intervalometer. Although some of the newer cameras have built-in intervalometers. So the settings that I have been used. I started out, I'd shoot an hour star trail, or try to for a 2 hour even, in one shot. And the problem with that, you get a lot of airplane trails, meteors, satellites, and other car lights. So it's really difficult to get those things out if you've got one continuous shot. The other thing is it can be really deadly if you forget to turn your camera back on after you change your battery. We had somebody do. So you get nothing. So if you cut it off early, if you're shooting one continuous shot, you get nothing if you turn it off early.
Oh, no.
So it's important to have this noise reduction off especially if you're shooting that. If you shot 2 hours, you'd have a 2 hour noise reduction. For a 2.8 lens, I've been using ISO 204 minutes. So that gives me 15 or 30 total exposures for a 2 hour shot, 15 shots per hour. So if I cut it off early, I still got all of those. However many I've got. But I've got 30 images. And if you have multiple images, it's a whole lot easier to remove unwanted artifacts such as airplane trails and satellites. If you're especially in Death Valley and the Bristlecone, there's a lot of airplanes. And the satellites now, especially if you shoot early, these little Starlink satellites show up all the time. So the aperture rate I've been using wide open if it's f4, or if you're slower than that, you're gonna have a problem. Wide open on the 2x lens, faster lens can work at either f1.4 or 1.8. Coma can be a problem with the fast lenses, much as it is with Milky Way shots. So if you're going to if you want to buy a fast lens, you want to make sure it doesn't have a coma problem at wide open.
What's a coma?
I'll show you.
Okay.
The downsides of fast lens are the aberrations and the vignette. All the fast lenses have a lot of vignetting in the corner. This is lens aberration coma that turns the stars into little twinkle things. Like it puts wings on the stars like this one and this one. So this is blown up. So you're starting to, this is a 1.4. So you're seeing these little artifacts. And they're only in the corners. But they are in there. They're all over the corners of the image. If you go to 2.0, there's still a couple of them, but they get smaller. If you go to 2.8, you completely get rid of them. But it defeated the purpose of having a 1.4 lens. You're shooting at that. So manual focus lenses are fine, or star trails. You can't autofocus anyway. The IRIX 15 millimeter 2.4 lens is less than $1,000. It's closer to 500, and but it has about 3 stops of vignette in the corners. So that's the downside of that. ISO, I use a relatively low ISO for stars so as to preserve the color. If you look at, I'll show you some of the original shots. They almost look too dark. You think, you look at them, you say, these are way underexposed. But if you want to preserve the color in the stars, you have to keep the exposure relatively low. When you stack them together and process them, it brings out, they get quite a bit brighter. I'll show you. And you can use a higher ISO for the foreground shot. So usually blend the shots of the stars and then have a separate shot of the foreground, which I can do for 5 or 10 minutes at a higher ISO, say 800. The noise is generally in the shadows. You can take a composite, take a shot during twilight if you can set up and know exactly where you're going to set. Shoot, and use that with the composite of all the star trails. You can use a light source to light the scene. You can use light panels or a flashlight, although I've had uneven results using that. I found better just to use a separate shot with long exposure and higher ISO after the star shoot. So I was something like ISO 800 and maybe 5 or 10 minute shot. Of course, if the moon's coming up, it can provide quite a bit of light. You can get a shot of light in that. The two most important items, I think, you can get a star trail just about anywhere, but the trick is to find an interesting composition. You got to find something that makes the star, that tells the story, or tries to tell the story. The stars aren't actually moving. It's the Earth that's rotating, and what you're showing is the Earth rotating about the North Star. The other problem is making sure you can get a good focus. Because if your stars aren't in focus, you won't have a good star trail. Same way with trying to shoot Milky Way. So composition, you need to have an interesting foreground object, try to tell the story, and scout. It's important to scout the area in the light. You don't want to try to find the spot when it's pitch black. That is really difficult. They see that it's hard enough to find the spots that you scout during the daytime, depending on how you mark them. You can drop a pin on your GPS, probably the most reliable, or put your tripod there with something that so you can find it again. So it's difficult to find the spots at night. Things look a lot different at night.
We've gone out and started on a composition, set our tripod there, it's been fairly remote, but we discovered that we have Christmas tape and it's green and flashy because when it's really dark and we have a black tripod, it's very difficult to find it 4 a.m. in the morning. And so we have, we put metallic tape down the legs of our tripod so we can flash it.
It doesn't work all that well.
It's better than nothing. I'm thinking of putting one of those beepers on.
I think dropping a pin on GPS is better. Focusing is a real continuing problem. Autofocus will not work in the dark, so you cannot autofocus on any stars or the moon. You might be able to do it on the moon, but you can't do it on a star. What I recommend and what I've found works the best is use live view and magnify as much as possible, which means going past 100%. The focus must be fairly close to even show stars in live view on most cameras. So you have to turn the focus knob so it's close to infinity and the indicator. And then go from there. You can turn it right and left. Try to get a sharper point of light as you possibly can. If you've got a big fuzzball, it's definitely not in focus. And you have to take an image and look at it, magnify it on your back of your screen. And I tell you, the hard part is that you're magnifying a small JPEG so much on those thumbnails that it's very difficult to tell the difference between an in-focus fuzzball and an out-of-focus fuzzball, because everything turns into a fuzzball. But there is a difference if you look at enough of them. So, and I also recommend partway through at the end of the shoot, where you're going to do it again and you're going to do your other shot, take a shot and look at it, see that, make sure you're in focus just before you start. Because we've had that problem.
Can I make a?
Yeah.
I'm newer to this than David, so focusing on fuzzballs has been you can lead to some really nasty arguments. But the best way to do this is before you're going out to the Alabama Hills, you've got to your backyard. You live in Lancaster, and it is not real dark, but and after twilight, when the first stars come out, you can practice just focusing on the star in your backyard. And I recommend doing that. I was a math teacher, go home, do homework 10 times tonight, 10 times tomorrow, before you bother to go up to the Alabama Hills if you want that picture. So I would practice. This is the most important thing, is getting the stars to be sharp. You can do it in your backyard. So all you want, you don't really want a picture at that point. All you want to do is learn how to focus that.
All right, if a small image like this looks like it's in focus, you look on the back of your camera and you think it's focused, but when you blow it up a little bit, you can see that you've got the stars are turning into little fuzzballs. This is a little fuzzball, these are little fuzzballs, this is not focused well enough.
One of mine. Probably one of mine.
No.
Probably one of mine. All right, we got some artifacts you're going to have to deal with to shoot long exposures at night. Satellites, the Starlink satellites are getting to be more and more of a problem. They want to put up something like 50,000 of them. So they're going to be everywhere. You can get occasionally you'll get a comet. Most of the artifacts you find are not going to be comets or meteors. They're going to be satellites. And then depending on where you are, airplanes could be a constant problem. for instance, in the Brooklyn Pine, the airplanes coming from the east going to San Francisco fly right over that area. So you get tons of airplanes. You get every 4 minutes, you get one or two. So every shot's got one or two in it. I'm processing the star images. The best article I found was called this artandnaturephotography.com. It was published probably in 2005. Then you look at that, and then there's an articles in there, and there's one article in there on star trail. The author is Floris Van Bugle. We actually had him speak here in about 2011. He gave a program for us. He was a student at Caltech at that time. Now he's a professor at the University of Reno in Nevada. So I used the method he recommended there, and I'll show you why. Post-processing these star trails, the shots, you have to shoot them in RAW, and you do white balance adjustment. A preliminary one, you can do more white balance adjustments. I used to make them on the blue side, but now I'm getting more toward the neutral gray shades rather than gray. You temperature adjust the blue-yellow balance, and after you stack them, they're going to change and process them. They'll change a little bit, and the tint adjusts the green-magenta balance. I'll do an example of stacking individual images, and then I'll go into Lightroom again and get the images. So this is the raw image, and see what I was saying. It's very dark. You barely see the stars in there, and the foreground clips are lit by the passing cars. So this one has got more light on it than this one, and this one got light at a different spot. These are all 4-minute exposures were composited into this, so I'm only going to do 4 of them because it would take too long otherwise. So you take them all, select them, edit in. We'll open this layers in Photoshop. I got Photoshop open, but it still takes a minute or two to open all those 4 images because they're big. They're like 45 megabytes per image. It'll load 4 layers in there, and you'll look at it and you'll say, well, that is so dark. You're never going to get anything out of that. But that's the only way to preserve color in the stars. If you look at the histogram, you see those little specks trail off in the bottom. Those are the stars. Bright, this is the bright stars. So you don't want to run all those out to white. So it's loaded 3 of them. Now it's got to load the 4th one. So now to be able to see it, I'm going to go into add a curves layer and pump up the brightness. So you can see then what you have to do. It's only showing you this top image. And I'm going to go to 100%. And you can see that they're trails. These are 4-minute shots. There we get an airplane going right across my image. So what I have to do is go to this, it's in the first one, add a layer mask, get a black brush, and I've got my color set to black. And so I can make it just a little bit smaller. you buy with a pretty small brush. I'm gonna paint that trail out. And usually they're fairly straight. You hold down shift, it paints right through it. All right, so I'll turn off the visibility of that one, and we'll look for the next one.
So
There's another
the continuation of the same.
trail. Maybe a continuation of the same one. They do go across. So, there's two in this one. At least two. These are probably airplanes rather than satellites, because satellites usually just give you a little flash. I'll paint this one out. Sometimes they're not all that straight. I think these last two images, I don't have any, there's one there. We gotta put a mask on that one to paint it out. These will definitely show up in your final image. You don't paint them out. Okay. And just masking out the trails in there so the stars from the other images will show through. So you really don't see the effect of that.
You made a new layer, you created a mask and painted black over it?
Yeah, no, it's a white layer and painting with black.
He on the photo layer, he made us a mask. And now he's painting black on the mask, because that hides what's on the actual photo.
And put a mask on the photo, on the layer that I'm looking at. Or I've got this mask selected, which is on this layer. The other two layers above it are turned off. So that layer is the only one on. So I'm gonna turn that layer off and see if I got any more.
So if you got like 10 images, you know, go. Bam.
It can take a long time to go.
Where she does like 530 second images. And you go through every one for there.
It's
See, this is the bottom layer, so it's gonna look funny when I paint through it. I had to pick some that I could do this with. I didn't have this in every layer, but I wanted to show you what you need to do to get rid of it.
It really doesn't take much more than about 15 minutes.
Yeah.
To do it. I can do it in 15 minutes. You can do it.
Then you can turn all the layers on. I'm going to turn off the thing. I'm going to select all these layers and change the blend mode of the screen to lighten. And
Are you magnified? David, are you magnified at this point?
my what?
Magnified.
Yes, I'm still at 100%. So I'm going to leave it up, but turn that down just a little bit. What I wanted to show is that if you do just change the blend mode to the screen, you get what appears to be breaks in the star trails. So there's a break between every 4 minutes. And that's what the article I referred to talks about, how to get rid of those little breaks. Because it looks like you've got to break it, every star trail there. So how do we get rid of that? Change these back to normal. I did do it with an action. So, because I did this one time and don't want to have to do it again, so. I wrote an action to do this. It didn't take very long, I think there's only 4 layers.
You wrote the action using Forrest and Google's article.
I'm doing what he did. I made an action out of it. So this is what it looks like when you get done. And because I don't have a full layer behind it, I get a black mark where I painted out those star trails on the last one. If I didn't have that, it would probably be okay. And then you can go in and add a curves layer to lighten it up once you're in this. Lighten it up as much as you want. What you're trying to do is prevent getting any of the stars. If you raise it all the way this way, you can overexpose some of the stars and you won't get the color.
Can you make the bottom layer just regular, not lightened, and it should fix that, right?
What he's doing is using light and screen, and he's combining the two.
Right,
together.
but I mean, if the bottom layer of your, because you selected all 4 and did lighten, if you do the bottom layer as regular, it might not have that dark.
Might not, but usually I don't. Usually there's at least 1 layer in there somewhere that's got a background on it, because I'm
Right.
doing 30 of them. But I only had 4, so I got a thing in every one. And it also lightens up the foreground. The foreground wasn't too bad, because this was just from the cars going by and the light on there. But I actually shot a separate shot to blend with it. I did this one, which was 8 minutes. I think this is the one I used. So I used 8 minutes, or I can see exactly what I used here in just a second. 240 seconds, so 4 minutes at ISO 800 f2. I think that one was too light. I used this one, which is only 3 minutes. So I used between the 2 of them. You adjust the opacity. I turn down the exposure on the one, or I turn it up on this one. But you certainly get star trails. So this is ISO 500 for 3 minutes. So I can use that as the foreground shot to stack with my star trail. This smear through here is actually the Milky Way. So you'll get it's the thin end of the Milky Way, but it goes right across here. The North Star is right up here. So I just went through it. Are there any questions on the processing part of it? Then you can go through, once you get them all stacked and put together, you can do your curves and final temperature adjustments and anything else you want to do to it to make it stand out a little better.
Can I recap? May I recap for you?
Yes.
So decide where you're going to go. You get there and you set up your composition, and you wait till the first stars come out, and you focus on that first star, and you get your camera set up to take
30 shots.
30 shots at 4 minutes each. And your tripod needs to be sturdy and it's nice to hang a bag off of it to make it heavy. Anyway, once you get it started and when you decide it's dark enough, astrological twilight, then you push start. And then you sit in the chair, you don't touch them.
For hours.
And you have a timer on your phone, and when the timer goes off and you go over it, then at that point, then you can shoot your foreground shot. And when you shoot your foreground shots, you should look at them because there doesn't seem to be a formula that we know yet. So you shoot it 500 ISO for 4 minutes, decide it's too light, then shoot a different amount of the foreground. But to shoot your regular shots, you want to do 2.8, 4 minutes, 30 shots. And I like a stair trail that isn't quite as heavy. But if I can shoot 30 shots, but I may only use 50. And then I get a month and a half.
I thought 200 for 2.8.
Yeah, I said 200 for 2.8. And consult Forrest Bugle. He's very clear on how to do this.
It's just tedious to go through and do 30 of these stacks. That's why I did it as an action.
So what did the action actually do?
It actually duplicates the layer, changes the blend mode, combines, and then flattens, merges the two layers. And goes through and does all that.
Okay,
So it's changing the blend mode. It takes the bottom layer and makes a duplicate of it and then merges it with the next layer, changes the blend mode again to screen and merges it with the layer above it.
okay. So that you ended up with a flat.
You can all do this. But if you're doing 30 images and you want to take the bottom layer, add it to this one, do this. You're doing this, it's too repetitive. So you wrote it as an action in Photoshop.
Yes.
And I'm sure who is it? You should sell your action.
Well, there are programs that do that for you.
You can get programs that'll stack your images,
There's one called Star Stacks that will do that.
but it's easy. It's not that difficult to do it yourself.
And anyway, the action is just because if you're going to do this 30 times, I can't do the same.
You get
I
confused.
cannot do the same 5 things 3 times in a row without making a mistake. So I can push buttons 30 times and I get to the top. And the other program that's interesting is that only from the viewers who started in Stage Stacker.
Yeah, that's for Milky Way shots.
Okay. All right.
So this was the final image that I came out with from that Red Rock Canyon shot. What I liked was the color and the stars. You can't see it as well on the thing as you can in my laptop on the image. The desktop is even better.
What time of the year was that shot?
That was shot in December.
You share with the blank.
Yeah.
So it was late December. We did 2 of them up there. I wanted to redo this one because I'd done it once before and I wanted to redo it and still thinking do a better job of it. And we did this one first, which is in a little ways. We did that one first, and I thought, I want to redo the other one.
That's one still the same parking lot, but farther over.
No, it's not the same parking lot. Close. It's if you know where Turk's Turbine is?
Yeah.
Go down the trail that way.
That's what that
There's
is.
a goat head or what they call it. Camel's nose. Oh. Is that?
Just take that, you park there for the turbine and then you take the trail that way.
Yeah.
It says it's called the Camel's Nose. And, they didn't bother us with parking in the parking lot. Somebody.
This was Camel's Nose right here.
Oh, I get it. Yeah. It looks like.
There it is, right there.
It does kind of.
Does look like a camel's nose.
And is this one that you lit with like a flashlight?
No, It's a long exposure.
Could you light paint? I was gonna ask about that. Could you light paint the foreground?
You can light paint the foreground. I did one of them and I didn't like it. It was very uneven.
We're not good at it.
It
We need
also,
light backs.
it also can be really flat if the light coming straight from the front, it makes it really flat. Like,
You need to do what you do well. Anyways.
yeah.
You can do what, different things, but I mean, the car light, you can actually make the car composite from the car lights, except the foreground does, well, the extreme foreground will not get any light on it from the cars. You can also do one of these, you can you can do one that, you've got to do one in infinity, because if you try to focus closer, it changes the magnification a little bit and it won't quite lighten up. So if you needed to focus on the foreground or something in the foreground, you have to take that one separately. So you have to do one at infinity, then you have to do another one focused closer. If you wanted to do that, because you get what's called focus breathing. So the area changes just a little bit as you change the focus. If you look at the focus stacking photos, because you can see it as you go through the images. It's getting bigger and bigger as you go out toward infinity. Some lenses are worse about doing that than others.
You had one that had a tree and the light was beautiful on the tree.
Yeah.
That one.
That one?
That was, yeah. Was
Uh,
that done in post or?
I probably lit that with a flash. You can do the flash I probably did it from two sides. Would be my guess on that one.
Too dark, too late.
Huh? You don't remember?
I don't remember. You didn't bring the panel lights?
No, I don't think so. I think that was like, I think I probably did that one with flash. I don't think we had the panel lights yet.
I do want to say, if you go to Wintersville Road in the off season, it's really dark. You want to make sure that you go in your truck or your high clearance vehicle. It's really, and then you know how to drive on that. I wouldn't go. I wouldn't drive.
I still have another, I'm scared. to drive.
The paved road ends at the Schulman Grove.
Right, and then up from there is,
It's 10 miles or so to get to the Methuselah Grove.
And it's like
A
one
patriarch,
road,
it's
right?
Patriarch Road is what it's called.
And it's one road, one lane, right?
No, it's two lanes. But it's a narrow gravel road without really a divider.
and it can kick up. It can kick up stones and you could get it flat and then you need to plan this. Plans and when the last time we went, somebody was coming down and we're taking pictures and passing us on the road, really rough. And he goes to the parking lot, turns the lights on his car, and we're shooting, trying to shoot because he put lights on his car, and anyway, I'm telling the story, and we watch him leave, and the lights are still on the car, and right, so, and he's going like,
5 miles an hour.
oh, less, yeah.
Down the
So
mountain.
we finish, he gets out of the view, we finish our stuff, we take the 5-minute shot, we take the 3-minute shot, we walk back to the car, we use the restroom there, we get warmed up, and we drive down, we pass him on the way down. And that
2 hours later.
2 hours later, he went by himself and driving just 5 miles. But we passed him, and I think I asked if he needed any help, but he said, he's fine, he said, I'm fine, I'm fine. It's not that, it's not doable, but you shouldn't go by yourself, yeah, and you should buy,
So we went by ourselves.
yeah. Two of you, though, yes. Yeah, the two of us, free blanket on water, they'll find you there the next morning.
Prepare for it, going to move overnighter.
Well, the problem on that road is that AAA will not come on that road because it's dirt. So if you have a flat there, you've got to change it yourself. And get stuck. And we've gone there when it's still snow on the road.
Oh. Beautiful.
Okay, they're very great.
No, it's fun.
It's not as hard to get to as Racetrack Valley and Death Valley.
Yeah.
That's 26 miles of really rough gravel road.
Is Helen still online? Ask Helen what she feels about the Racetrack Valley roads. Helen Henry was when we went to Racetrack Valley. Said her,
Helen, did you hear? Oh, wait.
her car never, the shop never recovered. Yeah. And if you go to the Racetrack Valley, you shoot star trails at night and it's dark, really dark, make sure you have your GPS with you and you have a big flashlight. Because you're shooting in the dark, you're out there because it's dark, there is no moon, and you turn around.
Well, and the rocks are a good mile away from where you park.
So you're gonna walk out, and it's not that the walk is difficult, it's just going back and finding your car.
So you better drop a pin on GPS where your car is, because you can't find it otherwise. But
There was a guy there when you sounded better and better. There was a guy there that was walking out without a flashlight.
You can look into the screen and ask Helen, and just tell her to unmute herself. Okay, so
Helen, what do you think about the Racetrack Valley?
It's
Getting
the
it.
it's the worst road ever. Seems to me you guys had to get towed out of there one time on tow truck.
The moving rocks are a good mile from the parking, the area where you can park. They're way over in the corner of the Racetrack Valley. At least they were when we were there. So this is one of the rocks and the trace that they made, and they painted that with a flashlight.
There's a campground just a little beyond that Racetrack Valley. And if you go to do this, you'll want to stay overnight in the campground. If you will not want to ride that 26-mile road in the dark, you'll want to camp. And I'm not much into camping anymore, but go for the beach.
Racetrack Valley is also a good place to shoot Milky Way shots, because it is very, very dark.
I've said more than I should.
All right, that's all we have. Any other questions about Star Trails?
When are we going to shoot?
we're going to Trona Pinnacles on May 20th. It's Saturday. And it's the day after you leave, so it's a nice start.
So I actually entered this particular image in the April competition, and that's what we're seeing. It actually got an award.
Good, good.
Yeah.
I just made it.
It's beautiful.
Somebody gave it an 8.
Yeah,
Interesting.
Yeah, 26.